I was diagnosed with colon cancer in March of 2020. At that point, it was stage 3. Recent scans showed that 2 of the tumors completely disappeared.
Mhm.
The rest are mostly stable, and some have shrunk.
Hello, this is Suzanne Clegg of spiritgate.com, and I have a great treat for us today. As you may know, I specialize in energy medicine for the treatment of cancer. I've worked with the Bengston Method for about 12 years as of this recording. I've facilitated many people getting completely better from cancer, and I've facilitated even more people living a lot longer, reducing medication, feeling like they're involved. I'm the author of There Is Another Way, Energy Medicine for Pets with Cancer. And I just devote my whole career right now to helping people using energy technologies with cancer. And a little while ago, David came to me for some help, and he's doing really, really, really well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Dave?
Hi, yeah, I'm David Blake. So I was diagnosed with colon cancer in March of 2020. At that point, it was stage 3. It progressed to stage 4 in January of 2021, and I had metastasis to my liver and lungs. And I had surgery to remove that and a bunch of chemotherapy. And I was no evidence of disease for about 6 months. And then recently of November of last year, I had scans that showed that it returned in my lungs.
So is that like 4 months ago?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's when I realized that it was time to do something different. And I had been sort of following you and you know, the work that you do, and I became familiar with the Bengston Method. And so that's when I decided that it was time to work with you. I was specifically interested in that method and working with you because the way that you work, you don't necessarily just treat and heal the patient. The patient is involved, and they actually work the method, learn the method, and that was what was attractive to me. Your
Well, what's
experience.
interesting to me is tell the audience about your recent scans.
So my recent scans showed that 2 of the tumors completely disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
The rest are mostly stable, and some have shrunk.
Mm-hmm.
So
They were mets in your lungs, and you were having very difficulty breathing and shortness of breath. And
right.
now you're breathing fine. So we're optimistic that the healing will continue. You know, fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I was having a difficult time breathing, and about halfway through the time that we worked together, all of a sudden one day I went to take a deep breath, and I got the first full breath that I had in months.
Makes me want to have a full breath listening.
Yeah, everyone out there is just breathe it in, because it's yeah. I've never been more grateful for that full deep breath, and I'm grateful for you and the work that you do, for sure.
Yeah. So you had tried other energy therapies, right? Because you weren't completely new to the idea that the mind and the body are connected.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell our audience about that?
Yeah, when I progressed to stage 4, I had always been someone that meditated and interested in spirituality. When I progressed to stage 4, I had a friend that recommended Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. I had been familiar with him already and read most of his books. So I dug, deep into his work. I took his progressive online workshop, read all his books, and began to use his meditations, and had some very interesting effects on my cancer. In terms of what we could measure, it was changing cancer recurrence tests. And so I knew that work at some level was actually having an effect on the disease. And so I kept, doing that work. And I also, once I became exposed to his work, energy medicine just became, something that I was fascinated with. And so I became certified in Reiki Sorry, just had a call come in.
That's okay.
I became certified in Reiki, so I give myself Reiki treatments and other cancer patients treatments.
And they were
And then,
comforting, right? The Reiki treatments.
say that again.
Were the Reiki treatments comforting, or what kind of mileage do you get from that?
Yeah, they're very comforting. It's it's an interesting way of I believe or feel, giving yourself love. There's just something very like tender and clear about a Reiki session. And the way that you feel afterwards is just different. Your energy has shifted. And so I continued to do that, but became aware of the Bengston technique, and was just fascinated. An interesting story. I had been following you. I had joined some of your free distance sessions on Facebook, and then I had read
cancer support.
Yeah, I had read a book called Healing Ourselves, Dr. Shamini Jain, and Bengston was mentioned in that book, and so I became obsessed with looking at his work and bought his book, and then put the two things together, that you actually had met and been sort of mentored by Bengston himself, and so it sort of felt like synchronicity to me that I would work with you.
Yeah. All right, good. So, both Joe, can you describe like the nutshell, which I'm sure doesn't give it its full respect, but just like a little nutshell of what you think, what you were, at least your version of what you were doing with Joe Dispenza's work?
Right. So the cornerstone of his work is what he calls the formula, which is a clear intention matched with an elevated emotion. So an example for a cancer patient would obviously be clean scans, and then feeling the emotion, in that moment that you would actually experience if that were to occur. So you are taking a future event that you desire, and then in the meditation, the magic really is in the beginning portions, where he leads you through different types of focus to bring you into brain and heart coherence. And then he leads you into a place in which you try to become nobody in no place and no time. His explanations, then you are now in the quantum field. And then you move into that place where you start to work on your desires. So you're in meditation, you're deep, you're extremely relaxed, and then you experience that report that says no evidence of disease, and your body is just flooded with the, whatever it produces, all the chemicals it produces when you actually experience that emotion. And then the idea is that you are pulling your desires out of the quantum field, because in that place of quantum physics, there is no time or space. And so we are pulling the future towards your present.
That's good. I think that's a nice succinct thing.
Yeah.
So Bengston Method has a similar overlap. There's parts that are just extremely different and probably antithetical to each other, but there is this overlap with Bengston's rapid image cycling method, where he has you create a list of 20 things that you want and really program them as deeply as you possibly can into your being. You see them, you feel them, you taste them, you hear them, you're there with them. And these are all physical things that you could take a picture of, usually. Like we all want like love and peace and harmony. The reason we want anything physical is to feel better. But he has you actually see images of physical conclusions of having your heart's desires. And then the difference is that he has you kind of forget about it and be in two worlds. So part of you has completely forgotten it, and you're in the here and now, really in the here and now, like just in the room that you're in, laughing, talking. You can be fighting, you can be laughing, you can be reading, you can be quiet, you can be eating, you can be walking, you can be resting. But then another part of you is whirling around these images at speeds that resemble the quantum field thing that Joe Dispenza, I think, refers to, because you spin them around so fast that they kind of go into a different dimension, and they're there, but they're not there, which is sort of a Taoist thing. You're doing without doing. And I feel like, anyway, do you want to say anything about that part before I explain my little sequence of surrendering your desires?
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's what was interesting to me about the two methods. And I think, if we were to look at what works,
Yeah.
What seems to work, the connection between the two is the sort of cornerstone of the law of attraction, which is to bring, to be grateful for something that you don't have yet, as if you do have it.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing about Bengston to me was the letting go of the having it, and placing that spinning ball behind my bed and behind my neck, and having it follow me around all day, created this sort of sense that it was actually happening. It's as if my body reacted as though those desires were just right there and they're going to happen. And so there was it actually changed my physical state.
And it's easy, right?
Right.
Once you learn it, you're like, you don't have to hunker down and do it. It's just, you just turn it on, and it's easy.
Right.
It takes effort to get there. But once you're there, the maintenance is not one of alignment. It's one of, to me, I teach people to be aligned with the here and now,
right,
but not necessarily with all their desires, because that's there. And then okay. So,
and that's why I think, one of the things I often hear from Dr. Joe's students is, you go into these meditations and you feel that elevated emotion, that as if you have that thing, and you walk away from that meditation and your energy has just been uplifted because you've just received, that one thing that you truly desire, and you feel it. But over the course of the day, you start to lose that elevated feeling, and you go back to your known environment, and you start to feel kind of crappy, and you experience lack, and so that's what a lot of people are challenged with. What I found with combining the two methods was that having that ball of light spinning behind my back created this sort of like relaxation, or this feeling that is of wholeness. Is the only way I think I could describe it. As if I wasn't really in need of anything. Of course, I went about my day and did what was necessary for that day, but I wasn't focused on anything that was missing in my life.
Yeah, it really, in that way, I would call it like an ego distraction. Like, okay, at some level, it's all happening, so I can be here now. And the Bengston Method sort of engineers that, so that you don't have to be this enlightened person, and yet you can pull it off. And you'll notice as your cancer's curing, you haven't achieved perfection, have you? You're just yourself a little more, right?
We can get my wife over here if you'd like to ask her, but I'm pretty sure she'd say no.
Yeah. So you're still you, and yet your cancer is able to release, and maybe some other problems too. It's helpful with. Right. Yeah, so I've thought about this a lot, because like most people in our culture, or just common sense, it's common sense that positive thinking is more helpful to things than negative thinking.
Right.
There's a tendency to want to think positive through cancer, but there's also this awareness that I have that negative emotions that are suppressed can like fester and actually be causes of cancer. Right. So putting a lid on your negativity we need to have a right relationship with all this whole emotional world. So one of the things I teach people is to just be in the here and now. And if you're cycling, often old stuff comes up, and you wouldn't want to suppress that. You have to be appropriate. You can't just scream at your significant other if that's what's coming up. You want to be nice, but it gives you something to do with these emotions that is actually helpful. Like if you're, for me, if I'm something that might have made me angry for a day or two makes me angry for an hour or two or a minute or two. It sort of speeds it up and finishes it, and I didn't suppress it. And so the damage of hours and hours and hours of indulging in these negative emotions, which is clearly not healthy, gets shortened, and that yet you are able to also not suppress them.
Right.
So I think that's a good thing. So
I think that's incredibly important. In my investigation of energy medicine, that's one way of getting your energy to be stuck, is by suppressing emotions. And I'm guilty of doing that.
Paradoxically, positive thinking can do that. It's like so sad because you want to be positive, but
right. And
if you really want to be real, you want to be real.
And I think that's important for everyone, but specifically for a cancer patient, because I believe that positive thinking is wonderful, but we also have the subconscious mind that says, whatever positive thinking you're saying, you've got cancer, right? And that means that people die from that.
Yeah.
So, this is a serious thing. So your subconscious mind is not accepting that, whatever you're saying that's positive. Mm-hmm. But having a ball of spinning, light that has 20 things that I desire for my future seem to allow my subconscious mind to allow the positive thinking to sink in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really very powerful that way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, with, where do we want to go from here? I'm thinking that, so I think what I told you to do, and tell me if you did this, is I said, use your training with the Joe Dispenza method to program your images on your list, to really feel them, to really be present with them, go into that quantum field with them and feel them as done, and then kind of retreat from that and spin them, and then you're doing the Bengston method.
Right.
And is that kind of what you did?
I did, right. I spent a lot of time. What I would do is I took one of the 20 things every day, my meditation in the Dispensa, and then I focused on that desire in the meditation, felt the gratitude, and there was something just so profound that you said in our last session, and I'm going to screw up the quote, but gratitude as an object of
an organ of perception.
Of perception, right?
It's actually the way you connect to the spirit.
Right. So I really
that's not Bengston. Bengston doesn't use that language, but I like that language.
Right.
Maybe some of the listeners will like that.
Yeah. That really, resonated with me. So I spent time just really in each one of those 20 desires, getting into feeling it. And then I started to ask,
gratitude as if it had happened.
And the gratitude. Mm-hmm. And what started to kind of emerge for me, and what I think is really helpful with the Bengston, technique, is that when you go through the process of putting down on a list of 20 things that you desire, you start to get a sense for, so I started to ask myself, what is it about this thing that I desire? What is it actually bringing me? Is there a feeling? And going through that line of questioning, I actually changed pretty considerably the list. Some of the things I thought I wanted, I didn't. And some of the things that were not even in my consciousness sort of came in. And it was this process of really learning a lot about myself through that list and the desires and the gratitude.
I love how you're saying this, because sometimes the way people understand that Bengston's rapid image cycling, it seems so superficial, and it can be the most profoundly deepest, soul-searching, soul-enlivening. And that's, I think, what I'm hoping the listeners and the viewers are seeing is just how authentically real you were with this process, and how deeply you cared about this process. And it was not just like, okay, I think I want a car, and I think I want I don't know, some clothes or something. It wasn't. I want a yacht. Not that those things aren't fine to want, but you arrived to the things that your desires in a very deep way.
Yeah. And by the way, there was a car on the list.
Yeah.
We are picking up said car today.
I love it. Yeah. I got a car once. I got a car
twice. Does it work?
Yeah.
Well, we're getting a car. I mean, it was on the list. And it's the exact color. And by the way, anyone out there, try to buy a car right now. Okay. Specifically the one that you want. Good luck. But we got a car. Yeah. And we got exactly.
Well, correlation is not causation, but it's fun.
It is. Yeah.
These correlations are pretty fun when they start happening.
Yeah. And I need nothing more than to see the scan results, to know that it worked. Yeah. Because I didn't change anything really physically. I think I changed maybe one supplement that I added that I hadn't been using before. But other than that, no chemotherapy, no physical, drugs or supplements that I had changed. So it worked.
Good. I'm wondering if it would be good to talk about, my way of detaching from the different levels.
Yeah. That was helpful for me.
That was one of my big things was I'm a studier of philosophies and religion. I'm like a spiritual mutt. I'm always interested, because I'm a therapist, I'm always seeing things from different people's deeply heartfelt belief systems. And most spiritual traditions talk about not having any desires, which is why I like Joe Dispenza and Bengston, because they say, no, have some desires. And I think that it's actually honest to acknowledge that you have desires. And so the first step and you can't really let go of something that you don't have. You can't surrender something. So I think the spiritual traditions talk about releasing your desires, but you can't do that without having them. I think I said that twice now. So the idea of thinking of a bunch of things that you want that you don't have can be hard for a lot of people. And I encourage people to go through that difficulty of saying, actually, what would your good life look like that you could take a picture of? We know that it would feel like. It would feel loving, peaceful, I don't know, flow state, like all those feelings are usually easier for people than to think of, okay, what does my house look like? What does my body look like? What does the family dinner look like? What kind of clothing am I wearing? What kind of activities am I involved in all day long? So getting really attached to them. And then there's an exercise with the Bengston Method where you have these images and you go image, 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 image. And what happens is it's very difficult to go around at this speed because emotions take time to come in. And so you think of the image, and then your tendency is to want to attach the emotion to it. But that takes like at least a half a second or so to see your car and you're driving it. It's like you want to oh, there it is. Because you've so carefully programmed it using all your Joe Dispenza methods. It's like natural. But what you do when you go image, 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 is you're actually breaking your attachment to the exact thing that you want. Right. And it breaks it, and it almost hurts when you're doing it. It's like, I want to stop and look at that one. Or it's really that level of practice is, I think, the breaking of the bonds of desire. And then the next step is that you go so fast that it's a blur. So then you're detaching once again from even the images. So first you detach the images from the emotions. Then you detach the images. Then you detach from the images and you just have the thought of it. And then you keep going. So then you're spinning. Bengston calls it hypercycling. It's like a blur in your in your mental picture. And then you let go of that. And then you're just in the here and now looking at your pen or talking on Zoom or whatever with that happening in the background, which is another level of surrender. And you're actually, it engineers your software engineer. You're like an IT guy, so I use the word engineer. It engineers how to do that, because otherwise it's really hard to let go of
It
your
is.
desires, right?
Right.
And then you can be in the here and now, knowing that that's where you need to be. And if
Right.
you feel sad, you can take care of yourself. If you feel happy, you can celebrate it. You're not burdened by all your desires. And let me tell you, you have way more than 20 desires. I have people start with, a couple million. Just like, we have lots of desires, gang, okay? We have way more than 20. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can do 20 easily. I mean, well, you can do 20 if you work at it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was helpful for me, for you to help me go through the sort of detachment process.
Mhm.
The hardest thing for me was getting those images to spin fast enough that I detached. My brain wanted to stop and
Mhm.
actually experience the image. And so I
Mhm.
had to work pretty hard at getting it, fast enough that I felt detached from the
What
image.
helped you do that? Because that's a real common thing. Just the reassurance.
I used some of the, recommendations you had. So like I would spin a cycle when I walked, and I would go through the list when I would, so each step would be one of the images.
Mhm.
And I would walk my dog, so she would start to go fast, and it would force me to go faster. Or I would
Mhm.
walk around in a circle, you know,
Mhm.
image, 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 image.
Mhm.
And I also have Bengston's book, and he has an exercise where he's beating a drum, and he
Mhm.
image, 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 and then he starts to speed it up. And so I use that as practice as well.
Are you cycling right now?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So am I. Yeah. 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 I have been the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I talked to you a little bit about this, but my theory is that, people talk nowadays about the sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system. And it feels to me like it just switches you into that parasympathetic state.
Hmm.
Um, and I could feel that because I do exercises, that try to bring me, different breathing exercises and things like that, to bring me into that state when I'm not, if I'm
Can
stressed.
you, because I can be cycling when I'm really angry and upset. Are
Oh
you
yeah.
able, that's not parasympathetic, is it?
No, but what I did find, similar to what you mentioned earlier, is that it short circuits the process. If
Mhm.
I'm angry,
It sort
it
of
allows
finishes.
me to just go through it, and I'm through it much faster than,
Mhm.
and I don't become attached to, you know,
Mhm.
the story behind the anger. It's just, here
Mhm.
comes the anger, and there it goes.
Yeah,
Right.
it really helps you detach and be in the here and now, which I think
It
is
does.
the key to healing. Maybe that's one of the mechanisms, is it helps us be in the here and now,
Right.
where everything has to happen now, and then so yeah.
Right. Right. But
Righty.
with anger, you tend to follow that emotion, because your mind starts to attach to the story behind what happened and why it was terrible, and different things about it. But when your focus goes back to that ball on behind your neck, it just seems to stop that whole process of attaching to the anger or whatever emotion it is. I had some
Mhm.
very, profound cries, and um,
Yeah.
it really seemed to sort of help me bring out whatever emotions were stored and needed to be processed.
Mhm. It's such an honor to work with you and my other cancer patients, because there's nothing like that diagnosis to just bring you to such a raw, honest place in yourself. And it's that place that helps you heal,
It is.
or
Yeah. And I
helps
think,
you go through it.
from my perspective, there are always messages in these things that we call disasters,
Mm.
gifts. And for me, I've just learned so much about myself,
Mhm.
and and
Mm.
learned to love myself more than ever before, and just love whatever is happening in the moment.
Mhm.
Just to be grateful for that breath, to
Mm.
take that deep breath every day, every morning. I wake up and say, what a miracle it is that I get a full deep breath.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, I love talking about this because I feel like I could talk about rapid image cycling for days and days and days. And I just love how you've just talked about your experience and it's working. the way you want it to. Your tumors are shrinking.
Yeah.
Hopefully, stay tuned, and we'll get an even cleaner scan next time, and hopefully it will continue. But even if it doesn't work, which I think it will work, but it's like the process has given you so much life.
Yes.
And it's given you hope, and the hope isn't from like, oh, I hope it's working. It's like, oh, my scan is better. This is good.
Yeah. Hope matched with evidence is, there's a Dr. Joe saying, which is hope alone is a beggar, right? But that really, it was interesting when we were working together. You were in my field, and you said, "There it is, hope." I felt it. Right?
It
That was true hope.
Really.
There was something about that moment where it wasn't manufactured hope. It wasn't just, I'm throwing a Hail Mary pass here and see what happens. I really had a genuine feeling that something was changing, and internally.
I call that genuine hope, and anything outside of you is false hope.
Right.
Even if it's me, I don't want people to have false hope in me. I want them to find it. There's this click that I can sense in people when they're actually genuinely there with it, and that's life-giving energy, or information, or something. That's you recognizing the real deal.
Right.
And it's inside. It's not something like, oh, that's my cure. It's like, oh, I'm healing. Wow, I'm healing. That's wonderful.
Yeah. It felt like almost everything just sort of aligned within me in a moment.
And do you feel like more like yourself now than you did before?
I do.
Just like the good, the bad, and the ugly are just you now?
Yeah, just more accepting of all of those things,
Yeah.
And
in process, not judging it all, being able to flow.
The shadow is just a part of me that needs more love.
Yeah. And you'll continue to evolve, and your perspectives will continue to evolve. Yeah. All righty. Well, thank you so much. This is great. I hope the viewers have really enjoyed this. I have. Any final word, or?
I just, I'm so grateful for you and the work that you do, and Bill Bengston and Dr. Joe as well. But, for anyone out there considering working with Suzanne, she is the real deal. She's amazing to work with, and she gets results.
Yeah. So. And we'll put the links to Dispensa and Bengston below the video, and of course to me, and we'll go from there. Okay. Off we go. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.